Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Final Destination Bloodlines, starring Caitlin Santa Junana, Brick Basinger, T.O. Briones, Richard Harmon, Owen Patrick Joyner, Anna Lohr, Ria Kielstedt, and Tony Todd, directed by Adam B. Stein and Zach Lipovsky. And before I get into this review, welcome back to Final Destination. I believe I did this series like a few years ago, but as I recall, the only one that was the good one was the first one. But we'll see if this gets any better. I have seen this movie twice for some reason, and I'll talk about why I say that in the review, but let's just get into the movie. We start in the year 1968 on the train tracks, and Iris, played by Brett Basinger, goes to a place 494 feet into the sky at a fancy restaurant with her boyfriend Paul, and a stupid kid grabs some pennies from the fountain so he could throw them in later in the scene, and the security guard tells him to stop twice, but the fucking kid doesn't listen anyways because he's stupid enough to call the security guard a fat ass. And I thought, fuck you to that kid. And admittedly, I flipped off the screen when it was directly at the kid because he was being a little prick. And he's also the reason everybody is killed along with the kid himself later in that scene, thank Christ. Because that little motherfucker got what he deserved. But back to Iris and Paul, when they go back up to the elevator in the restaurant and a waiter tells them they don't have them on the list for a table requested by a friend of his that he used to work with named Jake, but he got fired earlier in the day, as it looks fancy and there's a dance floor with music, and Iris and Paul go to the bar area as we learn Iris is pregnant with a baby. And a woman figures it out and tells Iris to tell Paul she's pregnant as they go outside and get some air. And Paul proposes his hand in marriage to Iris, while she says she's pregnant until death does its thing by killing everybody on the dance floor. And the deaths were laugh out loud hilarious, like in the previous Final Destination films. But honestly, I'm not having as bad of a time as the previous sequels. But do I think this is overhyped based on the Rotten Tomatoes score? Hell yeah! But it's not a bad time at the movies, but at best, I'm having a mediocre time. While Iris does get scared in the beginning of the sequence, as she gets a little blood taken out by a rose, as they're having the worst night ever. But to be honest, I don't really like the characters, as they come off stupid even later in the movie, except for Tony Todd, in which I'll get to later in the movie. But the sequence is poorly acted by the actors, as is this whole movie. And spoiler alert, it will be throughout the movie. And the sequence is predictable for damn sure. And this sequence did take a little too long, as this is a long movie at an hour and 50 minutes. I personally thought 20 minutes could be cut out of the movie and put it in the editing room floor, mostly in the first sequence. Stephanie Reyes, well, before we get to her, this is present day now. And Stephanie Reyes, played by Caitlin Santa Juana, I don't know if I'm saying the name wrong, please forgive me, has the dreams in which the events that belong to Iris, who happens to be Stephanie's grandmother, and her roommate is such a bitch to her, as she goes home to her family like her little brother Charlie, played by T.O. Briones, and her father Marty, as she asks about her grandmother, and Marty says don't bring it up to Uncle Howard, played by Alex Zahara, or else he'll flip the fuck out. And Stephanie thinks about going into a probation at her school and tells Charlie while she drives him to the cousin's house, like Eric, played by Richard Harmon, Bobby, played by Owen Patrick Joyner, and Julia, played by Anna Lohr's house, with Aunt Brenda and Uncle Howard as their parents. And Stephanie brings up Iris to Uncle Howard, as he and Stephanie's mother were foster cared, she's estranged from the family, and for a bunch of reasons why they don't want her to bring it up anymore. And Aunt Brenda tells Stephanie about the letters in the bottom drawer. And these characters are so goddamn stupid, as the acting in this is pretty bad, like in the previous movies. Stephanie goes to Iris's house as she is gated and comes off rather defensive until Stephanie says she's her granddaughter and lets her in by putting her pocket stuff in the collar thing, whatever the hell that is. And the fish lens shots were distracting at times, just like any movie directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. And the cinematography is better off without the fucking fish lens. While Stephanie comes inside and Iris says to her shut the door quickly and to not make any movements unless she says so. And she brings up how she dreams of her at the sky view and says she's saved everybody's lives from the dance floor until eventually they do get killed. And remember, death doesn't like it if you fuck up its plans. And Paul did die eventually after everybody else did, as they had Stephanie's mother and Uncle Howard as she acts smart. And Iris gives Stephanie a buck for survival, and she hasn't stepped down in 20 years. And Iris does eventually go outside and give Stephanie the book, and Iris gets killed by the bottom of the direction on the roof thing that, you know, when they go north, south, east, west, that kind of thing, with the rooster on top. And most of them in the most over the top way, which was hilarious. Iris's funeral comes, and Stephanie's mother, Darlene, played by Rhea Kilstead, I don't know if I'm saying the name wrong, forgive me, comes in a trailer, and Stephanie is too upset to see her because she abandoned them a long time ago. And she doesn't go to Uncle Howard's house for the barbecue until Darlene brings in some peanut butter cookies, while Bobby has an allergy, and in which she forgot about. And I don't know how stupid she can get at this point. Maybe she was distant, I don't give a fuck. And he breaks a cup which blends in with the ice a glass does as he pours it in a cup, and Uncle Howard gets the glass in his cup, while Stephanie sees the ways death plans its stunts, like with the barbecue, for example, to a rake underneath the trampoline, in which Darlene spots it right away, as Howard gives Darlene a key to his house, and eventually the glass gets out of the cup, in which Howard steps on, and Bobby tears the trampoline, and Uncle Howard gets killed by stepping on the glass and getting his head cut off by the lawnmower, And his death comes out rather predictable. If you've seen the trailers, you'll know why. Uncle Howard's funeral comes by while Stephanie figures out Death's plans, as Charlie figures out what it is and gets the family together, and she explains why they believe she's fucking crazy. And Julia believes Stephanie is making up a conspiracy theory, and they all leave as any of them could be the next. And it starts with Eric, as this is a typical bullshit way to explain the way death can kill any of these characters. Next, while Eric works at a piercing shop, as he pierces someone's tongue, and this dirtbag of a boss of his says Eric is closing the store while he goes to the fucking club. And this guy feels like a fucking asshole, while Stephanie texts him nonstop, and he ends up saying fuck off, cuz, as he also says he's sleeping. And Eric closes the shop after tattooing himself saying dad on there, and almost gets killed by getting his nose ring on a hook with a ceiling fan. And he almost dies eventually by escaping it. And he gets on the fire and somehow doesn't die. While this may be part of the reason why I'll never get a nose ring in general, because that shit can hurt like a motherfucker. And he brands himself, and that accidentally, I'll say, and that somehow takes a miracle to survive that shit. And this sequel did fool me in the teaser, as it shows he might die, and that was a good fool me moment. I'll give the movie that. Stephanie wakes up Charlie, and they look for Eric, and eventually they do find him, and she tells Eric to stay away from things like kids playing a soccer ball, which might hit him in the face. And Eric goes up to a trash can and pretends to give it a blowjob, as he doesn't get killed, but Julia does get hit by a soccer ball. It gets in a garbage truck and gets crushed, while the garbage man has his motherfucking headphones on while his truck is killing Julia. And thank God, because she was horrible to begin with. And I just don't care for that character, because I don't care for any other characters. And we learn Eric is adopted by Aunt Brenda and Uncle Howard, as he learns about his father at the wrong time, and that was stupid. And some of this kind of works in a way that was stupid, but it's not a bad time at the movies, but it's more of a mediocre time. Stephanie goes to a hospital an hour away from the house by Darlene's trailer, along with Charlie, Bobby, and Eric, and Darlene visit JB, aka William John Bloodworth, returned by Tony Todd, and I felt so sad for him as this is his final role before his death. May he rest in peace. And his character is the best thing about the whole movie, in my opinion, as he explains how they can either kill someone or to death or live the rest of their lives dying and live the rest of their lives as he was the child of the incident. At the incident Iris went through in the beginning of the movie, as he explains the events from the second movie. And he says good luck for them for the remainder of their lives. And he retires from working at the hospital and explaining death with Eric saying to kill Bobby after JB leaves the room, and somehow Eric and Bobby disappear, and Eric wants to perform a resurrection like he's Jesus. And the best thing about this segment is Tony Todd being the same character he was in the previous movies, and I appreciate him returning for his final role. Eric gets Bobby some peanut butter cups because he has a peanut allergy, as the vending machine pokes out while Eric grabs a wheelchair and puts Bobby on it with him eating the peanut butter cups, and eventually gets an allergic reaction so Eric can get him out in surgery. And a testing machine in the hospital sucks Eric's body as well as the wheelchair by maximum power, taking all the metal out of Bobby of Eric while Bobby gets the medicine for his allergic reaction. And he gets killed, which was over the top hilarious despite he didn't deserve it. But I still didn't like the character. And they get the idea to go to Iris's house by Darlene's trailer. And so far, despite this is only the second best in the series, as the first movie compared to the first movie, and I was shocked to shit this movie got a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, why? Why? Stephanie, Charlie, and Darlene almost get killed by a truck carrying logs, which is a flashback to the second movie. As they drive back to Iris's house, they arrive before the house goes kaboom by fire, and Stephanie gets stuck while in the seatbelt on the driver's seat, and she gets stuck while Darlene doesn't die yet, as she saves Charlie from getting crushed until Darlene ends up dead anyways, which was rather predictable. And Charlie saves Stephanie's life before she suffocates from the water, and he gets his finger cut, but he gets Stephanie out and does CPR on her off screen, and she wakes up, and we move on to Stephanie taking Charlie to prom with a girl named Jenny as her house is next to the train tracks. And Stephanie pokes her finger the same way Iris did earlier in the beginning of the movie and sees the car, and here's Jenny looking like $1,000,000, and suddenly it gets dangerous as the elderly lady at the hospital earlier buys some cookies at a lemonade stand, and a penny comes flying to block the train tracks from making a turn, and the train, as it makes the turn and kills a hell of a lot of people, including Stephanie and Charlie. And yes, I said it. Everybody fucking dies in this movie, like the previous movies. And the climax was fine but predictable. But what do I think of this movie? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this movie a 5.4 out of 10. I honestly didn't have a bad time with this movie as I did with the previous sequels. But do I think it's a little overhyped based on the Rotten Tomatoes score? Hell yeah, because it shocked me. It shocked me it got a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. But it's not a bad time at the movies, but at best, I'm having a mediocre time. As do I like the characters? No, not really, as they come off rather stupid, and as they were in the previous movies. And the acting by the actors are bad, like in the previous movies too. The deaths are laugh out loud hilarious because it serves those motherfuckers right to die. And like the way they did throughout, and at the end everybody does die, which is a typical bad ending for horror movies, including Final Destination, which sets up for more movies coming right up. And I'm going to miss Tony Todd, as he's the best character, and he only has one scene in this whole fucking movie because he died. May he rest in peace, of course. And this movie is a little too long at 1 hour and 50 minutes, as I believe 20 minutes of it could have been cut out of the movie and left in the editing room floor. The movie is predictable, sure, for damn sure, as I know the deaths when they're coming, as it felt like the previous movies, but to be fair, it's not a bad time at the movies. It was more of an okay time, as there are problems for damn sure, and this is second best in the series, but at the end of the day, I still prefer the original movie, but this is a weak recommendation for this movie, and sometimes it was good, but at the same time, there are problems with this movie, quite a bit, I will admit. So go check it out, despite I was shocked to shit after my first viewing. This got a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, which feels wrong in so many fucking levels. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for coming back to Final Destination. And until then, don't let death come to you.